Hello and welcome back to Foraging and Cooking with Kids. In this video, we show you how easy it is to make out of wild grapes a sourdough starter. There are two ways and I will show you how to start the yeast. In the video Foraging Wild Grapes and How to Cook Them, I explain all about the wild grape plant. Please look it up if you would like to try to find some on your own and use the wild grapes like I do. But to make yeast like we do today, the water yeast, you do not need necessarily the wild grapes. You also can use store-bought, they just have to be organic, or you can also use raisins and dried figs. Let's begin with the water. The water has to be cooked and cooled down again, that we don't have any bacteria or chlorine in it. We're using 2.5 tablespoons of sugar and a cup of just lightly rinsed grapes. We do not want to wash the grapes very hard, that we keep the yeast on it. Shake it a little bit around in the water that the sugar dissolves, and we will put it on a warm, dark spot. Between 3 and 8 days, you will start seeing a result. It starts having little tiny bubbles on top. You give it a good shake in the morning and you give it a good shake in the evening, and you always, when you shake them, you release the pressure and close it back up. Let's start with the sourdough starter. First, you will drain the grapes. Make sure you get everything because the yeast settles on the bottom. To make the starter, you use 1-to-1 ratio. 1 cup grape water and 1 cup bread flour, or normal all-purpose flour, but bread flour has a higher protein content, so it will give you a stronger dough.
It's cool.
It's cool?
Yeah.
Okay, now you take this out.
Can I get it?
No, that's not collecting. Then we put a mark right over here.
I can make a
That's where we started.
This box is big or that.
Good job. Put a lid on. Get it out of the direct sunlight. In between 2 and 12 hours, there should be something to see. The second variant will be grape flour. You see on the grapes the kind of powdery skin? That is the yeast that you want and need. We use around 1 cup of grapes and 1 cup of bread flour. You let it sit for 24 hours in a dark spot. So we remove the grapes and we use again the 1-to-1 ratio. 1 cup of grape flour this time and 1 cup of clean water. Then we mark the glasses to see how it grows. It has to be warm that it works. That is really, really important. It has to stay out of the direct sunlight, but really warm. And the lid has to be closed, but not super tight. Both variants will work with patience and time. When nothing happened in between 10 till 12 hours, the yeast wasn't good. Now let's go to the baking and make some rosemary sourdough bread. We use 300 grams of bread flour and 1 teaspoon of sugar and mix it all together with 195 milliliters of water. After mixing it well together, we let it sit for 15 minutes. Next will be 150 grams of sourdough starter, mix it very well in and let it sit one more time for 15 minutes on the side with a cover. After this, we add a tablespoon of rosemary, fresh rosemary, and a teaspoon of salt and a half a teaspoon of pepper. You can do whatever you would like. You can use even nuts in it. You can make it savory, you can make it sweet, whatever your heart's desire. Always have wet hands when you play with the dough around, or you will stick on it very fast. Now let's start with our pull, fold, and pinch technique. We will fold it now 4 times in 1 hour, so that means every 15 minutes, and cover it back up. We pull and fold in and pinch it down. Pull, fold it back in and pinch it down. That 4 times every 15 minutes. Now for proofing the dough, we leave it sit for 4 to 6 hours or till it reaches double the size. You also can leave it in the fridge overnight. If you do, leave it out for 2 to 3 hours to reach room temperature and then fold it and keep it to proof for 1 more hour. Remove the dough from the bowl on a very light floured surface and divide the dough in 2. Fold and shape the way you desire. Round, rectangle. Some have special forms. I lay it on parchment paper, what I will use to bake on it. Now we let it proof again for 2 hours, or it is double the size again. We start preheating the oven 30 minutes before it's time to go in. The oven has to be on 220 Celsius or 430 Fahrenheit with a tray full of water. 30 minutes before, because we want that the moisture in the oven is on full ongoing. Sprinkle the bread with rice flour and score the dough with a very sharp knife or razor blade. Bake for 25 till 30 minutes and let it cool down all the way before slicing. We use rice flour because it doesn't burn like normal flour. Now we made a beautiful, crunchy, very good tasting sourdough bread out of wild grape yeast. And this is how I keep my sourdough starter going. I have half a cup of water and half a cup of flour, and I put the rest of the starter within and mix it all together. Put it on a warm spot for a while that it activates, and then I will put it in the fridge. And in a week or so, I will bake another bread and keep it going and keep it going and keep it going. Some of my neighbors have sourdough starters over 30 years in their family. You can do the same thing, as long as you keep on feeding your yeast. Next week we're foraging for rose hips. We make jam out of it, and I will explain you how healthy they really are. Till then, we see you next week with foraging and cooking with kids.